Chapter 129 Curse Element. Since they left, let's start harvesting the treasure. Tisk, tisk, a fire soul seed. If I obtained it, then Yunmei would definitely kneel down for me. Let's see if she'd still act all virtuous as she ignores me every day, the man with a mole on his face said. Give this thing to me. I'll give you guys some other good things. Dongfang Jun said firmly, as he tidied up his expensive clothing. The other people were shocked before they began to smile apologetically. No matter how dissatisfied they were, they still did not dare to fall out with Dongfang Jun. Although each of them was indeed an intermediate mage, Dongfang Jun was a direct disciple that was able to eat on the same table as those from other noble sects. These people just did not have the guts to strive against Dongfang Jun. I'm sorry, this thing belongs to me. As for other benefits, if my mood is good, then I'll let you all die a little less painfully. As the other four were planning on reaping their harvest, a cold and gloomy voice floated over to them. An extremely pale-looking youngster with a baseball cap and a somewhat handsome face was walking over. The chaotic atmosphere that remained after the magic battle suddenly descended into a biting cold that penetrated into their skin, right down into their bone marrow. This man had the aura of an expert, and an indifferent killing intent. The person who looked like a runaway scholar suddenly revealed a ruthlessness that was similar to that of a magical beast. He swept his emotionless gaze past the four magicians from the Dongfang family. Who are you this time? HMPH, you actually want to reap our prize after we worked so hard for it. Dongfang Jun's face immediately displayed his anger. You might have heard of my name, Chao He. The man slowly took off his hat, revealing half of his face, immediately showing a demonic expression. What shocked everyone was that on his forehead was a mark that was clearly imprinted using a branding iron. The people who had this kind of brand were mostly those who had been sentenced to death by the magic trials. Chao He, it's that killer magician, the man with the combed hair exclaimed. Dongfang family? If I remember correctly, you guys have a girl called Dongfang Qinger. She seems to be quite delicious. Chao He began to laugh. You bastard, you actually dared to toy with a disciple of our Dongfang family? Oh, toying with her wasn't anything special. What I meant was she was quite delicious when I ate her. Chao He licked his lips, looking like a blood demon. As the four people heard this, they began to feel goosebumps. They knew that the girl called Dongfang Qinger had been taken away by this crazy demon, Chao He. Who would have thought that this monster had actually eaten her? On the other side, Mo Fan glanced at Mrs. Tong Yue, his heart rippling with an endless wave of fear. This person was so insane that he'd even eat a person. What was the difference between him and a magical beast? That's why we cannot let him go this time, Tong Yue whispered as her eyes turned cold. The four people of the Dongfang family aren't weak. They should be able to. Before Mo Fan finished, that monster called Chao He began to laugh strangely. His laughter was extremely dreadful, like the screech of a blood-sucking bat. As he was frantically laughing, Mo Fan suddenly realized there was something black slowly descending from the high altitude. It seemed like a black spider web that had been there from before, and at the same time, it also seemed like the claw of some vicious creature slamming down. I was actually here before all of you. In fact, this demonic pit was actually a gift I prepared for our meeting. A black claw and a black spider web appeared. When the four men raised their heads, they could see the trap, enveloped in a black mist. It was the shadow of an astonishingly sinister spider. Its numerous eyes displayed an avaricious glint and made them feel like they were being absorbed by the creature. It's the curse element, retreat. Dongfang Jun yelled out, his face changing greatly. Everyone panicked. They had never seen magic like this, that allowed the unseen black silk to bind their whole body. As they were bound, if they closed their eyes in an attempt to cast magic, the avaricious eyes and the frightening body of the sinister spider would appear within their spiritual world. Its disgusting body and masses of eyes within their minds made them unable to control a single star. Oh no, we're too late. Tong Yue suddenly stood up as her face turned pale. Originally, Tong Yue wanted to take action when Chao He was attacking the four people from the Dongfang family, and quickly and thoroughly deal with him. Who would have thought that he had prepared a curse web here ahead of time, and bound the four Dongfang men instantly? The spells from the curse element were usually sinister and cunning. You couldn't defend against them if you were not careful. The four men from the Dongfang family had been completely focused on the squad of hunter magicians. When they seemed to be relatively exhausted, Chow he cast his intermediate curse magic to directly and effortlessly sweep up everything and everyone instantly. Furthermore, the sinister spider trap had been cultivated to the 3rd level. When it reached that level, the sinister spider's spirit would become a phantom that would enter people's minds, leaving those who had fallen into the trap without a way to resist. The Dongfang men were not weak at all. However, they were unable to defend themselves against this kind of cursing scheme. Once they had fallen into the trap, these 4 people were no different than disabled people. They were simply sheep. We should rejoice over the fact that we didn't appear earlier, or else we'd be the ones who fell into that trap, Mo Fan said with a gloomy face. The fugitive that Mrs. Tang Yue was planning on dealing with was even more frightening than a magical beast. This person was just like a spider. They put out a transparent web, and had their prey walk into it unaware. Once they ferociously tried to break the web, that's when the god of death appeared in front of you. If they were a spirit element or a light element, they'd still be able to survive. Otherwise, they're dead for sure. Tang Yue really wanted to save them. However, even if she was to take action now, she'd be of no use. She specialized in the fire element and dark element. The spells from these 2 elements were simply unable to break the magic of the curse element. How about lightning element? Mo Fan had already pulled out a Star Atlas book. Tang Yue immediately shook her head. All of the spells within the curse element are cast beforehand. Even if lightning killed the person who cast the spell, it'd still be of no use. The curse element would still continuously nibble away the life of these 4 men. In other words, the second these 4 people entered this place without realizing the curse was cast, that was when their lives no longer belonged to themselves. This guy is truly dreadful. Mo Fan couldn't help feeling astonished. Tang Yue bit the side of her lip, her expression solemn. As a judge of the magic trials, she had an obligation to save people. However, right now, she could only stand there and watch the curse swallow the lives of the 4 men. She couldn't take action, because even if she did, she still wouldn't be able to save the 4 Dongfang men. She could only wait until the moment Chow he loosened his vigilance while he harvested the fire soul seed, before she could deal with him. If she let him escape this time, then who knew how many more people would suffer from a similar calamity. Chapter 130 Giant Shadow Spike. Dark, transparent threads tangled around the 4 Dongfang men. Their faces seemed lifeless, as if their souls were being drained away bit by some sort of evil matter. The only person who had the ability to resist this was Dongfang Jun. He appeared to be in pain as he furiously shouted, "If you kill us, the Dongfang family will never let you live. The people from the famous family are really dumb. I'm not even scared of the trial guild. Would I be scared of a mere family?" Chow he retorted with a gloomy grin. Chow he didn't bother to care for these men whose souls were slowly getting drained away. His focus was on the bottom of the badly cracked reservoir. In truth, Chow he was also very surprised. This was indeed a water source. How would a fire soul seed appear here? Unless it was the hellfire? Normally, hellfire was a fire made from underworld heat that had been quenched for thousands of years. This type of flame as a fire soul was pretty docile, so it was quite easy to make it yield and refine for your own use. This type of fire soul seed was the best pick for many of the fire element magicians due to the fact that it was subtle and impressively strong. In an auction, it usually sold for an exorbitant price. One of these elemental soul seeds' prices could reach up hundreds of millions. If you failed to refine it, then you might as well abandon your cultivation. Very good. After I refine this hellfire, I will be able to do whatever I want with my increased power. Chow, he shouted joyfully. He still had an insurmountable gap to becoming an advanced magician. In normal conditions, his strength wouldn't increase greatly in a short amount of time. However, with the hellfire, the power of his fire magic would increase remarkably. Let's see if those hunter magicians and the people from the magic trials would dare to hunt me. Boom! As a screeching noise was heard, the cracked and dry water reservoir exploded, a scorched hole appearing in its place. The location of the hidden hellfire wasn't very deep. This kind of elemental seed would normally cause a major alteration to its surroundings. When that happened, it hinted that it was laying bare, ready to be discovered. After the hole exploded, a heat wave from below shot up. The heat wave formed into a pillar of flames, as if it had been freed from its shackles. Chow, he was laughing madly when he saw this majestic pillar of flames. There really was a fire soul seed. Judging by the clean, captivating red, he was able to determine that this hellfire was relatively pure. It was a rose flame. The normal color of flames was scarlet red. That kind of scarlet flame could be called common grade. Any magician who had awakened the fire element was capable of controlling that sort of flame. Blaze was of the spirit grade. The heavens produced a special kind of flames with a spiritual nature, able to call themselves blazes. This kind of blaze, dyed a captivating rose red, was named a rose blaze. Its scorching heat was much higher than other fire soul seeds. It could be described as simple, yet ferocious. Taking such a high risk and killing more people for this kind of treasure was indeed worth the trouble. Chao He's entire being began to tremble from excitement. His ecstatic expression was greatly different compared to the 4 Dongfang family corpses whose souls had been drained dry. "You wait here and observe, I'll head in first," Tang Yu whispered to Mo Fan. "You don't need my help?" Mo Fan pointed at his nose. "The opponent is a crazy murderer. I only let you come along as an extra layer of protection, not to fight this psycho," Tang Yue replied with a serious tone. To Tang Yue, Mo Fan still was a student. If the other people had seen those 4 intermediate magicians from the Dongfang family die, that person would be trembling in fear. Tang Yue knew that Mo Fan was brave, but that didn't mean Tang Yue would let Mo Fan fight needlessly. Due to the fact the Magic Trials was currently dealing with the calamity in Bo City, they were unable to dispatch any people. Otherwise, Tang Yue wouldn't have allowed Mo Fan to join a dangerous mission like this. Mrs. Tang Yue had already said so. Mo Fan could only remain motionless and observe. On the other side, Chao He's hands were directly touching the rose blaze pillar that had erupted. It was obvious that the captivating red energy was merging with Chao He. He was enjoying the power flowing into him. After Tang Yue waited for a few moments, she finally began to move. Her beautiful figure was able to smoothly move through the shadows of the trees. In just a few blinks, Tang Yue had already appeared behind Chao He. As Mo Fan watched Tang Yue casting her shadow magic, he subconsciously held his breath. He thought if he breathed heavier, then the psycho might discover them. It started with a dark star path, which nimbly condensed itself under Mrs. Tang Yu's feet before rapidly constructing a star atlas filled with a mysterious dark energy. After the star atlas was completed, Mrs. Tang Yue slowly stretched out both of her arms. Her buxom chest impressively condensed a half-hidden giant spike. The giant shadow spike looked like it contained abundant dark energy. The surrounding shadows began to distort as it was being formed silently. Even when the giant shadow spike suddenly speared through the area ahead, there was only traces of the shadows rippling, and not a single sound was heard. Mo Fan watched this giant shadow spike in shock. He couldn't help but lower his head as it swept past before he realized this giant shadow spike had disappeared from its path. There was only an incredibly fast silhouette that indicated its existence. This was the shadow element's intermediate magic? Mo Fan was shocked that it had no form and that it was a completely silent skill. How could one possibly defend against this? The giant shadow spike flew past the woods, abruptly appeared in Chao He's shadow. The giant shadow spike didn't assault the physical body of Chao He, but his shadow. Despite the beautiful pillar of flame that was lighting up the surroundings brightly, Chao He's shadow was clearly shown. The giant shadow spike shot from Tang Yue in the woods accurately speared Chao He's shadow, just like a person being impaled. Chao He's whole body quivered violently. His shadow was nailed down and couldn't move an inch. His body couldn't move either, as if his body was physically nailed down. Tang Yue felt more at ease when she saw that Chao He was successfully spiked down. Giant Shadow Spike was one of the strongest imprisoning spells in intermediate magic. It was unable to cause damage to any creature, but it was capable of stopping their movements like a pressure point. It was also able to seal the enemy's thoughts and render them momentarily unable to cast magic. The target of the giant shadow spike was the shadow. Even if they used magic equipments or armor, they still wouldn't be able to defend against it. Another hidden party? This is getting more and more interesting. Chao He stiffly turned around. It felt like his chest was pierced by an unknown item, making it hard to move. 4 more lives have died in your arms, and they were all intermediate magicians. Not only will you be punished with death, even your soul will be sentenced. Tang Yue walked out from the wood coldly. Her eyes were filled with the rage and dignity of an executor as she glared at Chao He. Chapter 131 Violent Fire Tang Yue. Chow, he turned around and saw Tang Yue. He didn't even seem slightly surprised. Instead, he had a sly grin on his face. I believe I should have 2 more charges, and one of them is for killing a member of the magic trials. Chow, he locked his eyes straight onto Tang Yue, as if he wanted to tear apart her soft clothing. There's nothing more to say to a scum like you. Tang Yue didn't bother any further. There was an outline of Firestar Atlas slowly being formed beneath her feet. Do you think I'll go down like this, Miss Tang Yue? Aren't you a little naive? Chow, he expressed an even more uncanny grin. Tang Yue's face darkened. Just as she was about to begin to fight, she suddenly realized there was a cloudy thing quickly surging out to her side. It then floated in the sky above the small reservoir. It assembled rapidly and formed a dark, cloud-like thing, throwing the whole field into darkness. The dark clouds were so dense that rays of sunlight couldn't shine through. The density of the dark cloud even devoured the fire soul seed's bright flame. The area instantly turned pitch black. As for Chow, his shadow was also assimilated into the dark, or to put it another way, there was now no shadow at the place where he stood. Chow, he was released from the restriction. He shook his head, and then burst out into an evil laugh. I forgot to tell you. I was aware that you were trailing me. In the past few days where you pretended to be a traveler and ate in the restaurants, I secretly put things in them. Chow, he spoke leisurely. He didn't appear like a criminal who had met his judicator. Tang Yu's face began to stiffen again. She had already foreseen that the enemy still had a card up his sleeve. This convict, Chow He, had escaped from the magic trials several times before, so clearly, he wasn't easily apprehended. According to what Chow He said, he had poisoned her food. Tang Yu would never believe that. As a member of the magic trial, if you weren't aware of your food being poisoned, then you'd be the same as an idiot. I knew you wouldn't believe it, but surely by now your lips are feeling dry. Chow, he didn't look anxious at all. After Tang Yue heard this, she subconsciously licked her rosy red lips. Truthfully, she already felt that she was thirsty and dry, but she didn't give it any second thoughts. She thought the reason for this was the dehydrated environment. It is impossible to make a member of the magic trial eat poisoned food. Thus, even if I am an apothecary, I did not put any poison in your food. However, I've placed substances that are beneficial for your body. Chow, he narrowed his eyes to a line while staring at Tang Yu's beauty, then slowly uttered, to explain it elegantly, the substances are good for women. They smooth the blood circulation. But, to put it bluntly, oh, you're already having a reaction. Just as he spoke, Tang Yue slowly went from feeling dry and thirsty to having inexplicably flushed red cheeks. Her blood circulation speed increased. The frequency of her heartbeat had also spiked. The most important thing was that she felt like there was something gently biting on her skin, making it hard to concentrate. Her breathing slowly became heavier, as if she wanted to gasp out the thirst from her throat. Her whole body felt weak, unable to muster the strength to stand. While at the same time, she felt herself immediately becoming a greedy cat that was unable to control itself from jumping into a certain chest. Shameless, shameless. Tang Yue finally realized what the substances were in the poisoned food. She trembled with embarrassment and humiliation all over. The magic trials wanted to learn the source of the violent spring from me, thus sending such a beautiful lady judicator like yourself to subdue me. Don't they know that apart from a magician, I'm also a remarkable apothecary? I have various methods to deal with women. Oh, didn't I mention earlier that there'd be 2 more added convictions toward me, one for killing a judicator, another. Tisk tisk. We're all adults here, I know you'll understand what it means. During the whole process of trailing Chow He, Tang Yu was very careful. She couldn't figure out how this shameless convict knew she was trailing him. Moreover, Tang Yu had been vigilant. She already knew that the psycho was an apothecary, so she had been very wary of things, including nourishment. Unfortunately, she had been continuously taking precautions against things that were harmful to her, never realizing that Chow He would not poison her at all. Instead, he chose to use those things that stimulate your body. No wonder when Mo Fan pressed against her under the shadows of the tree earlier, Mo Fan suddenly emanated an unspeakable attraction. It turned out to be she was under the effect of the stimulants, making her amorous. Bastard. This damn wretch. Why does the world have such a despicable human being? Deep inside the woods, Mo Fan had seen the mishap. He was also taken by surprise. He was also an adult, but how did he not figure it out? At this moment, Mo Fan still couldn't make up his mind whether to make a move or wait a bit longer for an opening. Mo Fan certainly wouldn't watch his beloved Mrs. Tong Yue be murdered in cold blood. The problem was, could he even fight against this psycho? "You swine! I'll burn you to ashes!" While Mo Fan was still struggling to make up his mind, he heard Tong Yue roar. In an instant, a tremendous wave of flames started to spread in all directions with Tong Yue as the center. Where Mrs. Tong Yue stood, her long hair was even blowing without restraint, like a noble and beautiful phoenix releasing its anger. Phoenix flame. Tong Yue stood there proudly and gracefully in the raging inferno. Her eyes revealed an amazing scarlet-red color. There was a hint of killing aura displayed on her beautiful face. Fiery fist. The flames rose to another level. Ju Gong. The last was said respectfully. Mo Fan was fairly familiar with Tang Yu's starting position at releasing intermediate fire elemental magic, but it also felt different. First, the flame which Tong Yue controlled was not the common red flame that was regularly seen. She named her flame the Phoenix Flame, as it presented an overbearing scarlet red color, as if she had noble blood in her. Second, her fiery fist was not the level 1 fiery fist, exploding heavens. It had reached the third level, 9 palaces. Now that Mo Fan had seen her Phoenix Flame, he had no idea how strong it was compared to common flames. For the 9 palaces, when Tong Yue agglomerated all the surrounding waves of flames into her left hand, she threw them ferociously at the ground. It was then that Mo Fan finally experienced what the fierce fist 9 palaces was. Mo Fan was struck dumb at the shocking sight. Chapter 132 You fucking dog. No matter what, the small reservoir was still 100 meters in circumference. This hallowed, dried-up ground looked like it had been rammed by countless things, as numerous cracks on the ground frantically spurted superheated earth into the air. The cracks on the ground were like a vermilion-colored whale jumping into the air, charging out of the sea, surging forward. Following that, 8 other majestic molten cracks exploded. It was like the surface of the ground was being released from its shackles. The waves of fire were spreading into the surroundings. Additionally, the collision of the forces combined into an increasingly ferocious destructive wave of fire as it rolled over. The spirit of the flames was rampaging around the colossal pillars of the ground cracks. It was like a ferocious beast as it bared fangs and brandished its claws. Its wrath was unfathomable. A violent fist spurted forth from 9 ground cracks. Each of the ground cracks that bubbled forth was reflecting the others. It became a raging flame that was wreaking havoc wantonly in the 100-meter-wide area, setting everything on fire. The 4 intermediate magicians from the Dongfang family had used an intermediate magic that could be considered somewhat powerful. However, compared to this Queen of Flames at this moment, they would be considered relatively weak. Although the 2 magics were the same spells, they felt like they were of different realms. This was Mo Fan's first time seeing Mrs. Tong Yu's true strength. He was unable to comprehend it. This Chow, he will definitely be burned into ashes. The colossal energy of the violent fist exploded over this part of the mountain range. Not too long ago, this area was a small water reservoir, but after the Phoenix Flame's violent fist 9 palaces, there were no longer any words that could be used to describe it. When the grandiose flame energy had finally settled, Mo Fan stared at Chow He's location, wondering if that guy had completely fallen. However, Mo Fan was shocked once more. Chow He was still there. His entire being looked like he was covered in a layer of rock armor. The rock armor had already been scorched black. It even began to peel off bit by bit. After the armor peeled off, it revealed Chow He's wounded body. He coughed a few times beneath the smoke, his eyes immediately revealing a killing anger. "You have actually destroyed my treasured armor equipment. It seems like you will have to use your plump body to let me vent out the anger of several years. Only after that will I allow you to die." Chow He's entire body trembled as he shook the destroyed armor off his body. The wounded Chow He no longer had that morbid grace. His entire being was more like a wild animal, cruel and savage. His eyes were fixated on Tong Yue, who began to heavily gasp for breath. It was like his gaze had torn Tong Yu's body into pieces. Shit! Seeing Chow He not suffering a mortal wound, Tong Yue grew increasingly alert. The truth is, when it came to fighting one-on-one, the Tong Yue who possessed the Sparrow Flames was a league above Chow He in terms of combat. Otherwise, the higher-ups wouldn't have let her pursue Chow He by herself. However, This guy Chao, he was incredibly sinister. The drugs he had dosed her with weren't life-threatening. However, they did severely affect Tongyu's control over her stars. Her desires were simply so strong that they nearly made her lose all her reasoning. Just how many of those slow-acting drugs did she eat for her to become like this? If it was only the effects of the drugs, then Tong Yue would still be able to do something. Unfortunately, she was currently feeling traces of cold coming from her surroundings. It was precisely his curse elemental magic. This god's forsaken Chao, he had even included her in the magic. Tong Yue was preparing herself for the worst-case scenario, which was falling into the hands of the criminal. She'd have to destroy her body so she could avoid the insults. However, she still carried a slight hope. That hope was Mo Fan, who she had called over as a backup plan. Tong Yue called Mo Fan over because she was afraid there'd be some kind of accident. Furthermore, Chao he had also cultivated the fire element. Thus, fighting against him by herself would not be an easy job. Eneng, Tong Yue couldn't help but let out a moan. She felt her body growing increasingly weaker. She had no choice but to lean onto the rock next to her, as her breathing became more intense. The black, incorporeal spider web binding, and the effects of the drug made her want to strip off all of her clothes. The heat made her go nearly crazy. Chao He's violent gaze was fixated on Tong Yu's curvy, delicate physique. Seeing her weak, yet repressed appearance, made his previous irritable mood from before slowly settle down. It was like he was watching a sheep that was waiting to get slaughtered. Fiery fist, exploding heavens. As Chao he just relaxed his vigilance, a colossal fist of flames suddenly charged forth from within the forest. The trees were abruptly turned into ashes beneath the sweep of the colossal fist. The flames were surging as they became incredibly savage. The colossal fiery fist's objective was precisely Chao He. Chao He's face displayed a shock of horror. He never thought that there'd be another intermediate mage hiding inside the forest as he was taking his sip of victory. Boom! The fiery fist exploded on the location of Chao He, once again becoming the center of a colossal explosion of flames. Mo Fan was staying back as he looked at the chaotic flames. He thought Chao He had been blown into dregs. However, the cautious Mo Fan would not easily walk out of the forest. If there was yet another trap there, then he and Mrs. Tong Yue would definitely perish together. Still not dead. As Mo Fan saw Chao He standing there, his face also turned serious. Even this kind of sneak attack did not succeed. Just how many cards does that guy have in his sleeves? Mo Fan's current mood could only be described with 3 words: you fucking dog. On the other side, Chao He's surroundings revealed a half-arc shield made of water. Behind the water shield, Chao He's face had turned incredibly distorted. Even though he was able to open the abundant water shield to protect him, he still felt the shock of the fiery fist. His viscera and bowels were in incredible pain. Kid, if you want to act like a hero and save the beauty, then you need to know if you are capable. With blood flowing down his mouth, Chao He's gaze was viciously staring at Mo Fan. He looked as though he was going to eat him. We're both fire elementals. Do you really think you can hurt me? You are merely someone who has just treaded upon the intermediate level, and you have yet to awaken a second element. Do you really think you can fight against me? Magicians with a higher cultivation could easily determine the cultivation of another magician through the use of perception and intent. Initially, Chao He thought there was yet another judge from the magic trials appearing. However, after observing carefully, he realized it was merely a guy who had just entered the intermediate level. His strength hadn't even reached the level of the 4 people from the Dongfang family. He hadn't even awakened his second element. This made Chao He feel at ease. It was obvious that this kid was together with Tong Yue. It seemed like he was still able to contend, and still had a high chance to seize victory.